Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fired Up, the podcast for marketers working in early and late stage startups. I'm Morgan McLintic, the CEO of startup marketing agency Firebrand. We've launched this podcast to interview the best in the business, but I'm not going to do it alone. So please meet my co-hosts.
I'm Nicole Pytel, Firebrand's VP of Content Marketing.
And I'm Chris Ulbrich, Firebrand's Head of Media Relations.
I'm Ian Lipner, a tech PR and crisis communications veteran.
We'll drop a new episode each week, so there's plenty of fuel for your marketing fire. Get the spark you need to take your startup to a whole new level. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fired Up. Slight change of plans today because our scheduled guest has been called away on a family emergency, and we wish him well. So it's just us today. And I thought what we might do is spend a little bit of time talking about how agencies build their pricing. Why would we do that? If you can understand how an agency builds its pricing for the work that it does, it'll help you set a scope of work and agree a budget more accurately. And it would also help you be a better partner with that agency if you understand how they work and where they make their profits. Why am I capable of talking about this? Well, obviously I'm running this agency and I ran another agency before that. And at that firm, we also acquired 3 other agencies and integrated them. So in order to acquire them, we spoke to a lot of different firms. Plus, there are a bunch of books around agency pricing, and I'll reference 1 or 2 in the notes here. It's a big topic amongst agencies, probably more than you need to know as a startup marketer, but just a little bit of an insight into how agencies price their work will help you, and I think that's what I'm aiming to cover today. The basic model of an agency or any consultancy is that they're buying labor in bulk, the hours of the team, let's say, and they're selling it in fractions to clients. So that's sort of like warehousing the hours, and then they are selling it in smaller segments to different companies. And that's great for clients because they get to much more flexibility and they get to access levels of seniority or a range of skills that they wouldn't normally be able to afford on their own if they were buying 100% of that person's time. And it's great for the agency and they can address a wide range of problems. And obviously they can make a profit by taking the risk of buying in bulk and selling in fractions. That's at its core what an agency is doing. And the way that they price it, there are typically 3 models. One is based on time. One is based on a set of deliverables. And the last one is based on value. We'll come on to some other ways that agencies also make revenue, but the 3 main billing models are time-based, deliverables-based, or values-based. So let's just talk about each of those in turn, and we'll cover the pros and cons. The most basic one is time. The client, that's you, is basically buying the time of the team. And each team member has a different hourly rate. Now, that hourly rate could just be based on seniority or the skill that they have. And it might be by level. So everyone at an account executive level or an account supervisor level, let's say, all has the same billing rate. Some agencies may refine that a little bit more. And the hourly rate is based on remuneration of that member of staff, a calculation about the proportion of all the costs of the business, the rent and the subscriptions and the travel and entertainment, etc., sort of apportioned out to everyone, and then a markup. And the basic concept then is if you have an hourly rate which has all of your costs plus a markup built in, you can then feel confident about selling that in fractions in an hourly way to your clients and know that everything being equal, you should make a profit at the end. In here is an assumption about the capacity of each member of staff. Because obviously there's a finite number of hours in the day and a finite number of productive hours. And the number of billable hours that a member of staff can actually deliver in a day is finite. And it might vary from agency to agency because obviously you can't be billable all the time. You're doing training and you're doing some internal agency operations, or you might be tendering for new business. That's not chargeable to anyone. So there are going to be some non-billable hours and there are going to be billable hours. And maybe more senior people have other commercial responsibilities within the agency than more junior people, but maybe more junior people need more training. So they have less capacity. Some agencies are very efficient. Some agencies are less efficient. So whatever that billable ratio is, it might even vary by level as well. So there's an hourly rate and a sort of capacity rate or billability rate. You end up with, okay, this person has this hourly rate, let's say it's $200 an hour, and I'm expecting them to be 75% of their time I'm expecting to be billable, and the rest of the 25% of their time, they're going to be doing other things, including new business and training and non-chargeable work. You can build up quite quickly then, all right, here's how many people I have, here's how much capacity I have, here's how much revenue I think I can make, and my profit is built into that. Then when you come along as the client and say, okay, I have this budget, $15,000 a month, the agency can say, okay, and here's the problem. Here is how I can marry up the people that I have by seniority to address this problem. You're going to get this number of hours broadly, and I can allocate this person, Johnny, to this client for 10 hours a week, and Samantha, etc. And we're going to come up with the budget. And then the staff will complete their timesheets to track, did Johnny and did Samantha do the 10 hours that we thought that they would do? And if they did, great, because the client is getting the value that we hoped that they would get, or the level of work that was imputed, and the agency is making sure that it's right servicing its clients. And if it does that, it makes a profit and everybody is happy. Now, of course, timesheets can be imperfect, right? No one can remember exactly what they did unless they diligently record it as they go through. Now, most marketing agencies are not law firms selling their time in 6-minute increments. That's just not why you go into working in an agency. And it doesn't really sort of work like that. So many just do it on 15-minute increments. And some people are better at doing it than others. And some cultures of agencies are stronger and lean into that sort of timesheet and getting that data accurate than others too. There are some agencies, I'll say, who make a virtue out of not doing timesheets at all. And again, that's another sort of intra-agency discussion. They're still fundamentally buying in bulk time and selling it in fractions, but they just have less data about where that time is coming from and going to. But you as a client may or may not see those timesheets, but this is somewhere behind the time-based pricing model. And what are the pros and cons of this model? Well, the pros are that it is very simple to understand, right? I am hiring a team. Here are the team. I've got this many hours, and this is what we're going to do. And they think with those hours, they're going to be able to deliver the goals that I have set them. And from an agency perspective, it's great because it is equally simple and it scales. If you've got 10 people, this works. If you've got 20 people, this works. If you've got 2,000 people, this works. So it's infinitely elastic in that sense. The cons are that if you really tie it to hours, how many hours did we actually work? Some agencies will log those hours and then invoice you exactly for those hours. And so you, as the client, your fees every month are going to vary because, hey, this month, Johnny actually did 12 hours, but Samantha only did 6 and she was going to do 8. So the pricing is different. And the next month, Johnny's on vacation for 2 weeks. So he only does 5 hours and Samantha steps in to fill the breach and she does a whole ton more. She did 15 hours. You're going to get a different invoice every month based on that. And so that can be confusing as a client because the price is going up and down and you have to sort of manage the overall budget. Where are we at on budget? Are we on plan? Are we not? And of course, the inaccuracies in timekeeping there will directly impact the invoice. So, hey, Johnny just tacks on an extra hour. You just got to charge an extra $200, or he forgets, and great. And that can lead to questions about where the time is being spent. And did Johnny really spend that amount of time? And how long does this really take? And so I feel like once you're pulling out the timesheets to sort of prove where the time was spent, then the relationship is starting to fracture. So we try to avoid that. It can also sort of behind the scenes lead to some variances in hourly rates by clients. Let's just say you hire your agency in 2024 and they have a certain hourly rate, and maybe you're grandfathered in on that rate because then next year they increase their rates. Or a big client comes in and tries to negotiate a discount on the hourly rate, which I personally don't think is a great idea. Then you end up with different clients on different rates. And from an agency perspective, this can be confusing from a billing perspective and sort of timesheet management, etc. And you can end up with some odd behaviors. Oh, this client has been grandfathered in since 2018. They're on a really low rate. Our prices have increased. We've increased our rates with them a little bit, but not enough. Now, I don't feel like we're being adequately compensated for the work, but they're a very loyal client. You just don't want that kind of dynamic. So the main problem with this is that time is an input and not an outcome. So you're buying the time, you want them to be efficient, you assume that the agency is going to be efficient, and even if the trust is there, and even if the pricing is consistent, you don't know what outcome you're going to get. But it is simple. And look, there are some proxies for time. Some agencies have points, and every dollar is a point. But basically, it all rolls back up into time. It's just a slightly more sophisticated version of that. So that's the first one. And I would say the traditional one. Many agencies are based on time, and when they're on a fixed budget or they're on a variable budget, but time and materials kind of thing, that's the model. I think this model is going away. The second model is based on deliverables. Here you are buying a scope of work, some kind of output. So that might be a website. It might be a series of blog posts. Content development really fits quite nicely with this. I'm going to buy an ebook designed up and written, and then I know what I'm going to get. So I'm actually going to get an output from this. I'm not just going to buy the time, 10 hours of Samantha's time, in which I hope that she can write an ebook. I'm actually going to get the ebook. And if it takes Samantha 20 hours, that doesn't bother me as the client necessarily, because I'm getting the output. So here you basically get a menu. Here are the different services that the agency offers. You can buy from that. And behind the scenes, the agency still has its hourly rates and its imputed profit, but it's basically packaged those up and said, hey, a blog post on average of 800 words takes Samantha this amount of time to write. So we're just going to put that down. And then sometimes it'll be more and sometimes it'll be less, but on average is going to work out. And within that, we're going to make a profit. So what are the pros of this? Well, it's very simple to understand. Here's the list of services. Here's the price. I buy 2 of those and 1 of these, and then I come up with the budget. And it's tied to an output, and it scales, right? It can go up and it can go down. Scales with the agency. Really clear. What are the disadvantages? Well, it's based on outputs, but there needs to be a clear idea of what that output is. So I talked about an ebook. How long is that ebook? How well designed is it? Are you buying the image? If you're buying images, are you including the cost of the images in that? How many revisions do I get? And it's often the number of revisions. You'll see in this kind of pricing, number of revisions is an assumption that the agency will make. And if you go over that, then you're going to incur a change order. So, for example, you're buying a website. It's a 20-page website with 5-page templates, an assumption about a number amount of graphics design, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to assume 2 revisions of that. If you take 8 because, hey, we're going to change it and we keep, the goalposts keep moving or we were unclear about what we really wanted, then the agency will want to charge you for that, because if they don't, then this is a project that can just carry on ad infinitum, and that's bad. You do need a clear definition of what the outcome of each of these deliverables are and what the process is to get there. But once you have that, it's a great model. I do think here it's sometimes hard to appreciate the amount of time that it takes to create a specific deliverable. There's a rule, isn't there? I forget what it is, but like everything takes twice as long as you think it does. Humans are terrible at imagining how long it will take them to do a task. And if you actually analyze it, it's always twice as much. So you can look at these and go, blimey, it's going to cost this much for a blog post. That seems like an awful lot, but actually in practice, the agency has worked it out. That's some of the cons of deliverables-based pricing model, but you can instantly see we've moved from an input time to an output deliverable. So this is a slightly better pricing model, and you'll see it commonly in design and content agencies. It's much more common, a billing model. The third pricing model is value. This is the most complex, but essentially the concept here is that the agency bills based on the value of the outcome to that client. The real advantage here is that there's strong alignment between the agency and the client, where the agency is remunerated based on a portion of the value that they're creating. And it means you're both aligned around a specific result. Now, what do I mean by that? It could be the agency is going to be paid based on the number of leads that it generates. And you know the value of a lead. I know my cost per lead is $250, let's say. And I know if I get a certain percentage of leads go to MQL, go to SQL, close one revenue. And I know my profit margin as a client. So I basically know the value of a lead. And then the agency gets paid based on a percentage of the value that it's creating. Now, this divorces the time it takes to achieve the outcome from the cost of that, right? So, for instance, it might take decades to learn how to do something in 10 minutes, and you're paying for the decades and you're not paying for the 10 minutes. And so that's great for the agency to be able to incentivize the agency to improve its skills, and it remunerates them for it because it can deliver more outcomes within a certain amount of time. The pros of this model are that it does create this great alignment. It avoids the discussion about, well, look, how long did it take you to do it? It really doesn't matter how long it took me. It doesn't matter whether I'm efficient or inefficient, but it does sort of behind the scenes for the agency becomes more efficient, then it can make more money, right? And it avoids all those discussions around the process or the definition of what an output is, how many revisions, because we don't mind how many revisions there are because we're just trying to get to the outcome of whatever that deliverable is. It doesn't matter about the deliverable. The cons of this model are that it's very difficult to establish the value in each case. For example, in my example with leads, the value of a lead for one company is going to be very different for another company because their conversion rates are different. Their average sales price is different, their lifetime value is different. The whole model is different. So it doesn't scale that well. And there are some types of work that's hard to place a value. What's the value of a new website? Well, if it's a B2B marketing website, that's going to be different than if it's an e-commerce website where you're obviously very closely tied to revenue. And so as you're coming in and you're partnering, how do you do that? And for broadly based service offering agencies, hey, we do website development and maybe we do PR and we also have some content development and we do email marketing, all these other different things. The value of all those is really going to change across the different services and by different clients. So it doesn't really scale. But in some instances, it can be really great. For example, let's take it a PR agency. They might do media training. So your media training, your senior execs to take best advantage of the interviews that they get and not to make mistakes. It took the media trainer decades to build the experience to be able to train your senior execs. And it might only take them 2 hours for this workshop. You're not paying for the 2 hours, I just said, you're paying for the experience. And also, you might be also paying for sort of an imputed value of not making a mistake or misspeaking in an interview, which is hard to calculate, but is significantly more than the hourly rate of that member of staff that you might have had in a time-based billing model. It might mean, therefore, for media training as a service, even in a PR agency, with many of which have a time-based billing model, that the media training element of it is higher. Or you might say the same for funding announcements again. Sometimes it could go quite quickly. Sometimes there's a lot of work, but it's high risk and it's high stakes and all the investors are involved. And, the price of getting it right, because you can only give it once, it can be quite high. And it, of course, if you get it wrong, then, you pay a lot more to have sort of rectified that. Again, that might cause a sort of disconnect between the time it takes and the value to the client. And you're not trying to work out the actual value of a successful fundraising announcement, but you're trying to say, hey, look, the value to you of getting this right in the sweep of this company's history is higher than the time it takes us to deliver it. And the cost, by contrast, the cost of making a mistake could be huge. And so you want to be compensated for taking that risk. So those are the three ways that agencies tend to bill. And look, they don't have to choose just one. Some of their services might be based on deliverables. Some might be based on time, because we really don't know how long this is going to be. If you've not done it before, a time-based billing might be entirely appropriate because this is new and we don't know the value of it. And others could be value because, honestly, we know this and we've built up specific expertise. Now, some agencies also make revenue from other sources, and it's worth just quickly noting these. One is they might have some IP. So they have a particular methodology, or maybe they have some software. And maybe if it's client-facing software, maybe you pay a subscription to get access to that software. It might be some measurement software, for example, that's specific to your industry. That might be something that the agency charges a fee to get access to. I will say that most of that IP stuff is actually less client-facing and more internal software in order to make them more efficient. Instead of charging you explicitly for that, they may impute that in their other costs because they can actually get through a lot more work. If in a deliverables-based billing model, if you have software that makes things faster, great, because you're delivering more, for example. Some agencies also make a markup on third-party costs. I feel like most sort of routine things, travel, or again, in my PR example, press releases, etc., there shouldn't be markups on any of that. It's not where an agency should be making its profit. That might be slightly different when it comes to paid media. Now, some paid media agencies base their entire fees on a markup of whatever the ad spend is. So, I don't know, let's say they charge 15% fees based on whatever the ad spend is. That is a model that but it's explicitly in paid media that some agencies might have. And because they've sort of worked out, hey, basically, there's a floor on this, there's a minimum amount. We know we can make more money as we scale if we just do a straight markup. And, obviously that scales up. Now, a quick note on operations costs. When you engage with any agency, you are going to need to onboard them. You're going to need to meet with them. They're going to need to report on what they do. They have some sort of administration internally. They're going to meet internally, even without you, to assess how well the campaign is going, to brainstorm new ideas. There's time involved with that. You're going to have questions. Hey, why did this keyword go up and that one go down? Or what's happening to our cost per lead or what have you, and which need investigating. And so whatever the billing model, there is some sort of imputed time for operations. And some agencies break this out and say, all right, look, we're assuming that we're going to meet once a week, and we kind of know that we're going to report monthly, and then strategically we're going to report quarterly. So we've got the costs of that, and we know the onboarding costs. So there's a sort of assumption about the amount of time that's going to take. It doesn't matter whether it's rolled into the services or broken out, but you should know that obviously there is that time. It's the same with managing a member of your staff. You need the one-on-ones. They're going to have questions. You need to manage them. This is the same. Now, the important point here, whether it's transparent or not, is to understand what those assumptions are. Are we supposed to be meeting weekly, bi-weekly? How many questions can I really ask? Because, they could be infinite. And when there are overruns and an agency is sort of, spending more time on this than they had foreseen, this is where those things can often crop up. And I'll explicitly say that whatever the scope of work duration is, hey, this is a 90-day scope of work or 180 days or whatever. They've assumed a certain number of meetings and et cetera within that. And if the scope of work overruns past that, you're still meeting and the agency is incurring extra costs. In a deliverables billing model, we're going to deliver this many blog posts, this many ebooks, et cetera, let's say, and we're going to do this within 2 months. If it takes then 3 months to do that because they couldn't get access to the SME and you didn't approve the stuff fast enough, because you were on holiday or, the person was away or sick, then the agency is not making its profit on this because it's taking more time. You're doing 2 months worth of work in 3 months. So that means one of those months, its team of people are, it's bought in bulk the time of those people, and it can't reallocate them necessarily that easily. Sometimes they can, but often they cannot. So it's very important that you try to understand how that works so that we can keep on time. So it's not just, I'm a bit slow, and so the impact is on me, the client, but it also is on the agency because they are incurring additional time to meet with you, because things are taking slower, they're taking longer than you anticipated. Small note on that, but agencies try and keep that to a bare minimum. But obviously you need to meet. That's high value. That's where the consultancy happens. So what were their assumptions in there? And make sure that you sort of fully understood that. Okay, so those are the 3 billing models. Just in conclusion here as we wrap up. There's time-based, there's deliverables-based, and there's value-based. There are some other, markups that agencies might have. I think it's important to understand which one of those the agency has adopted and to appreciate the pros and cons of each and the assumptions sort of underlying it. And that will help you get the scope right, and it will make sure that you are collaborating as a good partner to them. You want your agency to be successful, so that they can hire new talent and they can grow. Agencies are typically fairly entrepreneurial. They want to grow so that their people can be promoted and remunerated and have great careers and stay. And you want your team to stay. So we want to make sure that this is at the right level and both parties feel that they are getting good value, whatever the pricing model is, so that the partnership is successful and the relationship endures. So that's a little insight into how agencies work behind the scenes. I hope that that's useful to you. I appreciate your time today. And we are wishing our guest, whatever the emergency is, a speedy recovery. And I will be away in Europe for the next 2 weeks. So I will personally see you in a couple of weeks. But the team will be here with another great episode next week. Well, that wraps it up for today. But 2 quick things before we go. First, we've just published our Startup Marketer Outlook, which is a report based on a survey of over 250 senior marketers, early and late stage startups, all about their plans for H2 2024. So please go to firebrand.marketing, and in the resources section, you'll be able to download your copy there. Second, if you've enjoyed the show, please give us a rating or a review. Obviously, subscribe. We really appreciate that, since that helps others discover the show. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week. And in the meantime, get out there and crush your marketing goals.